capital investment program and what changes, and we also want to get to relocated worker a little bit. What changes might be simple that would help, that we might get through budget adjustment, like the occupational things. So let's talk about capital investment program. First, what you're seeing, and hearing, and I know you've touched upon it with an overview in the past, but if we can drill down a little bit further in the next 10 minutes on that.
Sure. Thanks. I think that, all right, so we all know it's oversubscribed. We all know that it's pretty broadly distributed amongst sectors. The thing that I don't think we spent much time talking about is that a final rule was submitted by Treasury on the state fiscal recovery funds. I think it was 2 weeks ago. It's a 400-page final rule. We're still dissecting. And I got to say that the ARPA eligibility on this is probably the most complicated part of the program. So for example, there are some folks with presumptive eligibility, like I think daycare will have a very easy time of getting those through ARPA eligibility, or education, or hospitality to some extent, right? There's some guidelines about them having to have been in business before the pandemic. So that's all good. And I think they're including some of the arts and culture in that category. What we're finding is a robust take up by the arts and culture group, like museums and performing arts centers, and that's great. We've got childcare, we have agricultural entities like food hubs, slaughterhouses. There's some downtown redevelopments in terms of vacant space or burnt out space in a village center, and gathering of folks coming together to rebuild the area. So some extremely interesting projects. The issue that we're seeing right now is that net fiscal impact really minimizes the amount of the grant. And so you may have a project, like let's say daycare, that has requested $1 million, and the net fiscal impact may only come up to 300,000. Well, that's not good, right? Because we've got ARPA eligibility saying that is a presumptive eligibility for this money. We know we need it. We know it's a thing. And now we're going to give them a third, because in statute, the amount of the award is restricted by the net fiscal impact. Now, just, really you should probably talk to Tom Cavett about it, but just in shorthand, in my just plain sort of language, what net fiscal impact does, it not only takes into consideration the gross improvements that would happen in terms of the tax base and what's going to happen from the project, it actually subtracts from that costs to the state, right? So that's why we are left with such a much smaller net fiscal impact number. And I think the disconnect, or the conflating of two goals. One is the federal government provided these funds for the purpose of recovery, not to ensure that Vermont generates greater tax revenues. So I think we have to look at that again. We are also constrained in the statute that not only is it to determine the amount of the award, but the projects are to be ranked and prioritized by net fiscal impact. So again, it would put us in a position of ranking, let's say, a project higher than childcare, just because their net fiscal impact is higher. Like, is that the right approach for economic recovery money that's been granted to us by the feds? And so that is the change. We do want to either eliminate that or make that a secondary concern. The other thing is just an operational concern. Like right now, again, I think this is a question to be asked of the economists, is they have 60 applications or 50 applications to go and do modeling to verify the modeling that was done by the agency. Our Ken Jones worked on the models, and now we have to make sure that they're all in agreement and consensus, and that might be a very good exercise to determine incentive awards. But for economic recovery, for such crucial community-based projects, I would argue, it's a lot of time, it's also expense, and it's also it adds more lead time. Now, the other issue with capital investment is that these are all projects that take time, right? so the sooner it starts, the better off we all are, and to make sure that funds are obligated by 24. And we are taking that into consideration. We have to take project readiness into consideration, their ability to finish the project. I think we have regional distribution fairly well represented. We've got, let me just look and I can give you.
The funds need to be obligated by 24, or by the end of 24, but they need to be spent by the end of 26. Is that correct?
That is correct, right? So, you know, the sooner we start, the better. And the problem with, like, we were just looking at applications this morning. There was one project that looked great. We all loved it. It fits ARPA eligibility, but the amount of the award is going to be so small that it leads to question whether the entity is going to be able to complete the project. And I don't think that's the intent, right? So once again, I think we're hamstrung by the reg, and the ARPA reg alone is enough of a threshold and a hurdle. It is ginormous. Like it's big. The final rule is very, very strict about what to spend the money on, what you can and can't, the dollar amounts. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And in my CSG training, and not but, last year, not only this committee, but the Appropriations Committee was, given the task in very short order to design program parameters. And we did this with the understanding, and we pulled back a little bit on the amount of money that was being put out so we can give it a test run and have testimony like this come forward where we need to make corrections. But so it wasn't in an effort certainly to limit the program as much as it was to get the program correct.
Understood. Yeah, understood.
And so now we're at a point in time where we can review some of this and make some adjustments. So how much money has actually gone out? Or you said something about a preliminary approval.
All right, so yeah, let me explain
I
a little.
probably should pull out your report, would have this, but you can go through that.
Yeah, the report has a lot in it, but just to refresh everyone's memory, again, in statute, it said you're to have a rolling application basis held out for a quarter and then determine all the applications at once. I'm questioning that as well, because now we're left with this huge deluge, and then it takes time to go through it. And again, why have a project wait for all the other projects to come in when, in a way, think about it the way a bank would receive applications. You do it as the project is coming to its proper timing to get their capital stack in place. So anyway, we stopped accepting applications on December 27th, and the team is in deep review of the remaining, I think there's 77 in total that we have to review further for adherence with the state statute and the net fiscal impact final calculation. And on top of that, the final rule of ARPA, which has significant constraints as well. So this one is a good exercise in, making a program before the final rule comes out is extremely tough. And now we are just adapting as best as we could. So I guess I'm arguing for like the less additional constraints on top of ARPA. That would be a little bit better environment in which to operate for everybody concerned, for clarity and for just clarity, and also just operational, streamlining.
I understand what you're looking for, and maybe we could accomplish some of that in budget adjustment if the need is demonstrated. But
the need.
I'm trying to understand, in this program, has any money gone out the door yet?
Oh yeah, so sorry, nothing has gone out yet because we have to. So the applications have come in.
88, right? 88 applications. To look at our report. 65 million in requests.
Correct. And so now we're reviewing them. And we review them at the agency. We have to send them off to Tom Cavett and team, and they have to do the, check the model and make sure that fiscal impact okay. At the same time, we're meeting with Guidehouse to understand true ARPA eligibility as a result of this final rule. And all I'm saying is it's a bit of a juggling exercise, and it's going to take some time. But what we've seen preliminarily from the preliminary runs of this net fiscal impact model, the awards are shrunk for many projects that actually would score high on ARPA eligibility, but low on net fiscal impact. So what are we to do? Are we to rank them low? It starts becoming I don't want to say an impossible exercise, but maybe an exercise that isn't making much sense when you look at the initial impetus and intent behind the federal ARPA dollars, which is to get at recovery.
Okay. Well, we definitely will hear from Tom and probably the auditor. I know there was some concerns about any kind of guardrails on this program. Once again, we may have put too many on in our effort to see how it rolls out, but we're open to modifying as we learn more. I'm trying to understand for the question of budget adjustment. Let me put it this way. There was $10.5 million put in capital investment grants. What good would it do if we raised that, if we doubled that number in budget adjustment?
A heck of a lot of good. A heck of a lot of good.
Can you explain that to me?
So we have $65 million worth of amount requested and $10.5 million. Now, the other issue would be, is everyone to get 65 million? No, not everyone's going to get funded. But of that group, I'm thinking the net fiscal impact is equating to about $30 million worth of awards. Again, we have another filter, which is ARPA eligibility that we have to double check, right? It's become increasingly, it's going to be very, very difficult for a business. A business will have to prove COVID impact. Would have to be a disproportionately impacted business, which has some definitions to it. So I do think that's why the original impetus was to take some of the underfunded, the undersubscribed to fund this. But if there could be more funds in budget adjustment, that could help. But what would be even more helpful is the, not restricting the amount of the award to the net fiscal impact. I think that could be a showstopper for some of the daycare facilities, just as an example.
So, but I think we can accomplish both here for BAA.
Senator Clarkson, I love your optimism.
I was going to say the eternal optimism.
I love it. Let's go with it.
I love this program. I think this is going to have a huge impact on Vermont. It's a great program, and I'm optimistic we can actually manage this in the time frame we have for the Budget Adjustment Act. Oh, actually, I'm optimistic we can do all three things. So
let me ask. I don't mean to interrupt, but on budget adjustment. So the difference between budget adjustment, let's use the doubling from 10 million to 20 million. That could very well happen in a regular bill that's given more, due diligence in terms of defining the parameters of the program that the legislature may want to weigh in on. So that would be like 3 months, 2 months difference. What difference would it make to the projects if they got, or to the agency in terms of releasing the money, if they got the authority 2 months later?
So let me just make sure I understand the timeline. So
let's say budget adjustment gets signed towards the end of February, and we make an act where we can take a little bit more, do a little bit more due diligence, and we make it effective upon passage, and we get out of here at the end of April. So sometime before that, you have the same wording in a bill, but it wouldn't be in the mid-February Budget Adjustment Act.
A couple of issues. One is, of course, the sooner the better, which is, again, I get back to that idea of the sweep, right? Because then we could fund the projects that are eagerly awaiting our response because they issued these, they applied for this from the period of September through December. So to have them wait through April feels kind of lengthy. So I think the sooner the better, generally speaking. The other kind of threshold that we have is that I think that the Treasury is allowing us to issue grants based on the interim final rule, as long as that's done before April 1st. I feel like I need an algorithm. After April 1st, the final rule kicks in, and then there are some more specific criteria that it's been outlined in the final rule. So all that means, in plain English, is that we could probably do more with the money depending on IFR than we can with the FR. And so waiting for April feels problematic on a number of levels. So I don't know if that helps, but
Actually, that helped me actually.
I mean,
quite a bit. But
we anticipate that you would spend a whole session on capital investment because we do have an ask for an additional 50 million
exactly
as part of budget, as part of the regular, and we do have these asks to eliminate this, these things that I'm talking about as we speak.
Where are they?
However, since we're reviewing the project right now, and if there is a possibility, that would be grand. But like in other words, the underutilized funds, if we could get whatever 15 or
So
million.
there's language somewhere accompanying the $50 million request to
Somewhere. Yeah, I couldn't tell you where it is at this point, but yeah, I think we put that into an omnibus bill or.
Can you find that language for us and get it to us before next week? Because it sounds like you've incorporated some of the changes in the programs, the substantive changes or qualifying changes in addition to the request for advance significantly more money. Is that
right?
legal?
I mean, our estimate on the sort of the idea that it's in the budget would mean that's for a whole new round. So I think the difference here is that we'd be able to fund more of the current round if there was any interim ability to get those funded. That's really the difference.
And importantly, with the current criteria, because the interim rule is okay until April 1st, right? So we can, given what we have set in place, we're okay to grant applicants money through April 1st with our criteria from last year.
I'm going to caveat it. That's what I think. And I'm going to have that confirmed through Doug and the Guidehouse team. And, we have a lot of checking on this.
We await your confirmation on that. And going forward, we knew we had a $30 million ask. Now it's been up by 20 million to a $50 million ask for the capital investment. So we knew we were going to be dealing with this in our regular timetable anyway. What we're talking about is one of the reasons to do this for BAA is that more could fit under our previous criteria rather than hopefully that it would be the case.
Correct. That's true.
Okay. Let's move on to
new worker.
15 minutes. Let's move on to relocated workers. You would like to see a change in the occupational criteria. Can you talk about that for a second?
Absolutely. I think, God, I want to say the language is in the House Omnibus bill, but I think we had two thoughts. One is just eliminate the short-term occupational list, or at the very least give the agency discretion to waive the requirement to be on the short-term occupational list.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the request.
In terms of timing, as I understand it, you've got enough applications to go through the $500,000 we appropriated for the relocated.
That is correct. Yes, we have that.
And in due course, when would all of that money be depleted?
I don't know, because we have there's a queue of people who are being administered to, but there are other elements of the application they have to fill. So we can't really say, like, the employer has to do their part. they have to upload documents, but just based on that queue, we think we'll get through it. No, not everyone goes through it. So I couldn't tell you.
So where I'm headed with this question is, let's assume we changed the occupational thing, because there's people who have contacted you or applied that were denied, and they could have been important new residents of Vermont. Even if we change that going forward, which I would love to do, we don't have any money to give to them.
Could you make sure that it's accounted for in whatever change? So for example, make it clear that they would be, if there's no money, at least they're waitlisted. I think what's happened in the past is the people who we ran out of money, then there was created a new program, and then all those people that were left out for good, forever. So I think this time, yes, we would keep track of those who are kind of waitlisted. If it gets funded, it's funded. You know what I'm saying? Like we changed the rule. I don't know if you can make it retro or you make it like kind of, I don't know what the right words are, but something so that those who applied previously and were denied could be considered. So we
Right.
don't lose track of those folks. And we also, keep a list. And this way, when it's funded again, we could hit the ground running and start, instead of creating a whole new program.
So
Well,
we have that list,
the
don't we? But
yeah, the
we've got-
problem, I mean, you might be able to do that for people going forward from the date of enactment, but I mean, we're already criticized, and it sounded to me like the agency agrees with the criticism that we're not doing enough to make sure that people who are already here are getting money after the fact. And so we wouldn't be able to do that until we change the criteria. We wouldn't want to say that people who came here and moved here, who are desirable to move here, but weren't covered under the law, we're going to go back and give them money at this point. I think that would be wrong to do that, because they weren't eligible under the law at that point when they came. And the fact that they're here already and now we're going to give them money would be subject to a fair amount of criticism. But that's a small point. It just seems like it'd be unfortunate. I don't know if we can accomplish this, that we will have another gap in the program unless we can get some
Mr.
money, as well as the changes in the program happening soon. That's going to be, and you say the governor has $1 million in base funding and $5 million in one-time funding in his proposed budget to just as seed money to get this program to be more meaningful. It would be a shame to have this, several month gap before it can start going.
Right.
If we assume we can get the program past the House again. So,
So,
okay.
Mr. Chair, that's why the budget adjustment opportunity is big for me anyway, and I think for our committee. If we looked at a budget adjustment of 500 to 500,000 or $1 million to this now, we could seamlessly continue accepting applications, and we wouldn't require of both the applicants. I mean, we could accomplish both. So I would hope that we could actually move that so that we don't keep halting this program, because that just, the word on the street of just keeping stop, start on this is just really a problem in terms of getting, maintaining people's interest and maintaining it as a marketing tool to bring Vermonters here. And people talk about not investing in Vermonters. We invest, just our education system alone is $2 billion investment in Vermonters. We invest masses of money in Vermonters and in Vermont education and in so many opportunities for Vermonters. This is a very small tool for our toolbox in terms of attracting new Vermonters and new taxpayers and more workers for our system, which has lost a lot of workers. So
Yeah.
keeping it going seems to me really an important thing for us to do right now if we can.
Okay, well, we'll try for sure. So Joan, can you talk about, so the auditor has raised one criticism about people already
Yeah.
being here and getting the money, and do you have language to make that change to meet that concern?
I'm not sure it's in the statute language, but I think we would operationally do it differently. So for example, we wouldn't pay people before they move, but we would, how do you say, I guess, commit to them that they would, instead of them rolling the dice, moving here, and then hoping that there's money left, they tell us of their intent. We see if, the employer verifies they got the job, get some of that going and give them a period of time where they could, they need to move here before they get the money. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to, we can't just commit it forever. That was one of the recommendations by the consultant. So I don't think that detail is in the statute, but I think that's how we want to operate it.
All right, can you get us a short memo on that, just saying that you can do it operationally without any change in the statute and how that would look?
Okay.
Thank you.
Um,
So there was that operational change. There was the change in the occupational list, and there was some bridge funding to keep the program going until the bigger budget picture can be decided. I mean, obviously, if we knew there was agreement to fund it at the level the governor's proposing, or even a portion of it, then it would make sense to advance that money in budget adjustment because we've run out of money, and maybe even take it out of the future money. So and the total amount is not more than what is being suggested by the governor and the legislature, but it's more timely in its availability. So we'll have to work on that. Is there anything more you would like to say about that program at this point?
no, I think you covered all the bases.
And is that all general? Is the $5 million general?
General fund.
Okay,
Yeah, it's all general fund.
okay, because it wouldn't qualify for ARPA probably, right?
No.
Okay. Good. Well, we have about 5 minutes. Any committee members want to add? I can let you go a little early to get on the floor.
No, I think this is good. I think we have ongoing needs that we want to facilitate through the Budget Adjustment Act. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to do that. And I would hope we were able to manage to figure out how to do it.
All
Okay.
right.
Thanks
Thanks.
very much. We'll see you next week.
Oh,
See you on the floor.
Great. Keisha has a question.
I'm sorry, Keisha.
It's not a question, just generally, Senator Bryce sent us information that West Virginia is doing something similar. I like to think that eventually what would set Vermont apart is paid family leave and universal childcare and things that I hope we also just keep our eyes on, that make it easier for young families to work and raise a family in addition to this program. I think other states will start to look at this as employees become scarce, and Vermont's brand is all about, taking care of families holistically.
Yeah.
So you'll see, we're going to post our agenda next week. We're going to look at, with just our legislative council at this point, the two bills that were vetoed on paid family leave and minimum wage, and see if, to the extent there needed to be more of a case made for paid family leave, I think this situation with Omicron is really a poster child for that. And so we'll look at it. It was, in my recollection, the bill that was vetoed that came one vote short of being overridden was a fairly, it took us a long time to get there was fairly complicated. I want to know what the governor had proposed for the state employees, which seemed less complicated, not as comprehensive, but if there's something that can be borrowed from the past work we've done, maybe we can do something with that. But it is on our agenda
Yeah.
briefly for next week.